My mom basically picked my step-siblings over me and gave me an ultimatum: either share the college fund my late dad left for me or pack my things and be out within a week. But before I dive into all that, let me give you some background. I'm a 18-year-old girl, and I live with my mom, she's 44, along with my stepdad and his 2 kids. I've got one stepbrother and a younger stepsister. We're not exactly what you'd call close. My stepbrother, Bill, we'll go with that name, is a year older than me, and Sarah, my stepsister, is 2 years younger. All 3 of us go to the same high school, but we don't share friends or really even hang out. We've just never clicked, plain and simple. My mom and stepdad tied the knot about 3 years ago, but they'd been together for nearly 5 years before that. Honestly, the wedding felt more like a formality since we'd all been living together for 6 years by then. As for my dad, he passed away when I was really young. I barely have any memories of him. My parents were never married, and from what I know, my dad's side of the family never really liked my mom. She had a bit of a wild reputation back in the day, kind of a party girl, and that didn't sit well with them. My parents lived together briefly, but they didn't get married. Apparently, if they had, my dad's parents might have cut him off completely. When he was 26, my dad got diagnosed with leukemia, and by the time they found out, it was already too far along to do much about it. Thankfully, he had some time to sort things out before he passed. He set up a college fund for me, so I'd be taken care of and my mom wouldn't have to struggle after he was gone. I've known about that fund for as long as I can remember, his lawyer told me when I was a kid. That same lawyer has been managing the money ever since. But once I turn 18, I'm supposed to get full control of it. After my dad died, it was just me and my mom for a long time. I got used to it. Then, around the time I turned 8, my stepdad came into the picture. They dated for a while and eventually we all moved in together. My mom had moved us out of our old town, saying it was too painful to stay in the place where she and my dad had built memories. I've never met my dad's parents, they've never shown any interest in getting to know me. On the flip side, we visit my mom's side of the family every now and then. They're nice enough, but there's not a lot of closeness there either. So when we moved in with my stepdad and his kids, I was actually kind of excited. I really thought I was about to be part of this big, happy, blended family. I had a lot of hope back then. But things didn't really play out the way I imagined. I don't blame anyone in particular, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a letdown. It's not like they were outright mean to me or anything, but there was always this strange energy, like something just didn't click. We all lived under the same roof, but it never truly felt like a family. I never really bonded with my stepdad or his kids. I tried, I really did. I put in the effort for a few months, trying to get to know them, but they just didn't seem interested. Eventually, I gave up. At some point, I just accepted that we were more like roommates who happened to share a last name than an actual family. Now, my mom's experience was totally different. They welcomed her with open arms. The vibe they gave her was full of warmth and acceptance, nothing like what I got. I could be wrong, but I've always felt like the reason my stepdad and his kids were so happy to bring my mom into their lives was because she was nothing like his ex-wife. I've never met the woman myself, but from what I've heard, she was a total nightmare, a gold digger who drained my stepdad financially and took off after the divorce. After she left, he had to rebuild everything from the ground up and raise his kids on his own. She even gave up custody and bailed to go live with some new guy. So when someone like my mom came along, someone who wasn't trying to take advantage of him, I think they were just relieved to finally have some peace. And in that whole happy picture they were trying to paint, I just didn't fit in. That's how they made me feel, anyway, like a leftover from a previous life. It's tough to explain because there's no clear example I can point to. It's more of a gut feeling I've always had, just the way they acted around me. Even though I was technically part of the family, it never truly felt like I belonged. I used to tell myself I was probably just imagining things. That maybe I was reading too much into it. But deep down, I think I knew something was off. As strange as it sounds, I started to feel jealous. My mom seemed like she had found her place, her people, and I was still stuck on the outside looking in. Over the years, I began to resent them a little. Not for anything they did on purpose, but because it felt like I'd been left behind. I never brought it up to anyone, it just felt too small and petty to make a fuss about. I figured that's just how life was, and while I wasn't exactly happy with it, I learned to live with it. Which brings me to what happened recently. I've been researching colleges these past few weeks. Graduation's just around the corner, and I need to start applying. Money was never a concern because, like I said, my dad had set up that fund for me and my mom had always assured me it would cover everything. But then, just a few days ago, my mom sat me down and said we needed to have a serious talk. So, my mom sat me down the other day and hit me with something I never saw coming. She told me my stepdad hadn't been able to save up any money for Bill and Sarah to go to college. And because of that, she thought I should help the family by letting my step-siblings use some of the money from my college fund. Yeah. The fund my dad left behind just for me. Turns out, Bill had taken a gap year, and now he and I would be starting college around the same time. That's what the whole conversation was really about, figuring out how to pay for his tuition. But here's the thing, legally, my mom couldn't touch that fund even if she wanted to. My dad made sure of that when he wrote his will. He clearly stated that once I turned 18, the money would be mine to manage. No one else would have a say. And to be completely honest, I didn't want to share it. Not a single cent. I didn't see Bill or Sarah as family, and I'm pretty sure they felt the same way about me. Even if I didn't end up using every dollar my dad had set aside, I still felt like that money should be mine to decide what to do with. It was meant to give me a head start in life, whether that was for college, rent, or just staying on my feet until I could support myself. Besides, I'd already saved a good amount by going to public school instead of some expensive private one. My mom never had to pay a dime toward my education so far. And I wasn't slacking either, I was a solid student and was hoping to land a scholarship wherever I applied. Money had never been something I had to worry about, until now. But as I was getting closer to turning 18, I'd been thinking more about the future, about saving, about becoming independent. Giving away part of the fund to my step-siblings just didn't make sense to me. So I told my mom, straight up, that I didn't want to share it. If Bill really wanted to go to college, he could do what most people do, apply for financial aid or take out a student loan. She didn't take that well. She called me selfish, like it was some kind of crime to want to keep the money that was meant for me. And you know what? I didn't argue. I was being selfish, and I was totally okay with that. I told her as much, and I added that I didn't consider Bill or Sarah to be family. That's when things really went off the rails. My mom just lost it. She started yelling at me like I'd committed some horrible sin by simply being honest. I sat there in shock for a minute, trying to wrap my head around the fact that she was absolutely losing her mind because I told the truth. The hypocrisy was wild. She never once called out how I'd been treated like an outsider in that house for 8 straight years. Either she hadn't noticed, or worse, she had and just didn't care. But now, I was expected to act like family, love everyone unconditionally, and give up my college fund, all for the sake of togetherness. The double standard was insane. I tried to stay calm, to talk things out like an adult. But she wasn't hearing any of it. She kept throwing words at me, ungrateful, heartless, selfish. So I just waited. I let her finish her tirade. And when she was done, I looked her in the eye and told her that she could scream all she wanted, but I wasn't changing my mind. All that yelling was doing was pushing me further away and making it even clearer to me that I didn't owe them anything. For a second, it seemed like she heard me, she cooled off a little, and I thought maybe we were about to have a real conversation. Maybe I'd finally get to say what had been bottled up for years. But nope. That hope didn't last long. I forgot that in this house, my thoughts, my feelings, they didn't matter. The only thing that seemed to count was whether my mom, stepdad, and step-siblings were happy. My happiness? That was never on the list. So once she'd calmed down, she gave me an ultimatum. I had 1 week to change my mind. If I didn't agree to share the college fund, she said she'd have no choice but to kick me out. At first, I laughed. I thought she was joking, it just sounded so extreme and ridiculous. But she looked me dead in the eye and said she meant every word. Since my 18th birthday was coming up in less than a month, she wouldn't even be legally required to let me stay. I'd be an adult, and she'd be done with me if I didn't comply. I sat there stunned, trying to process what she'd just said. My own mom was willing to kick me out and leave me on my own over money my father had left just for me. Also her stepkids, who had never once tried to include me, could have a share of it. She told me to think carefully about my next move, like this was some kind of chess game and not my actual life. Then she got up and walked out, leaving me alone with all of that mess swirling in my head. It was honestly one of the most insulting moments of my life, being treated like a burden by the one person who was supposed to protect me. That night, I made a decision. I was done. I was getting out of that house no matter what it took. I started reaching out to friends right away. I told them what happened and asked if they knew anyone renting a room, or if they could help me figure something out. I explained the situation, told them how serious it was. I knew that once I turned 18, the college fund would finally be mine to manage. I'd have to be smart about how I used it, pick a college carefully, budget every penny. But honestly, it felt worth it if it meant getting out and finally being on my own. Because after that conversation with my mom, it was painfully clear, I wasn't wanted in that house. I was barely tolerated. All those years I spent wondering if I was just imagining things? Yeah. I wasn't. If anything, I'd been downplaying it. I'd convinced myself things weren't as bad as they seemed. But now I knew the truth, I was never really part of the family. And I had to start building a life that didn't include them. A few days went by, and one of my friends came through for me. She told me she'd talked to her cousin, who just so happened to be applying to some of the same colleges I was interested in. We were both leaning toward the same field, too, so there was a good chance we'd end up at the same school. Her cousin had already decided she wanted to live in an apartment rather than a dorm. She was all about being independent from day one. My friend suggested I reach out and see if we could team up, maybe rent a place together if we landed at the same college. Honestly, it sounded like a solid plan, so I didn't waste any time. I got in touch with her cousin right away. We talked for a bit, figured out some logistics, and I also told her about the whole mess I was going through at home. She was super understanding and came across as genuinely kind, someone I could probably get along with. So that part of the puzzle was figured out. I had a plan for college. The only thing left was figuring out where I'd stay in the meantime, since there were still a few months to go before the semester started. Luckily, that didn't turn into a huge issue either. A couple of my close friends offered to let me crash with them until I could officially move out for school. It wasn't the most ideal setup, definitely a little chaotic and not super secure, but honestly, anything was better than being stuck in that house with my mom and her new family. Because after that blowout fight with my mom, things got really ugly, not in an obvious way, like screaming matches or slamming doors, but in the kind of way that slowly crushes your spirit. The passive-aggressive treatment, the cold stares, the way they all acted like I was some disease they couldn't wait to get rid of. Whenever I walked into a room, conversations just stopped. Everyone would suddenly have something urgent to do somewhere else. They barely looked at me, let alone spoke to me. I hadn't even done anything wrong, and yet, they acted like I was some kind of monster. It was humiliating. Every second in that house made me feel worse about myself, and it got to the point where I just wanted to disappear. So I made up my mind, as soon as my friends were ready to have me over, I was out of there. I just needed one excuse, one final push, and I'd be gone. That moment came when my mom finally spoke to me again. She asked if I'd had time to think things over, and if I'd decided to change my mind. I didn't sugarcoat my response. I told her straight up that no, I hadn't changed my mind, and actually, I'd decided I was leaving. I told her I was done with the psychological games and the way they'd all been treating me for the past week. I said it was honestly disturbing, borderline psychotic, and I wasn't going to take it anymore. I let her know I'd already lined up a place to stay with some friends until college started, and that she didn't need to bother kicking me out because I was leaving on my own. I also told her I never wanted to see her again, and that she could call me selfish or ungrateful all she wanted, it wouldn't change a thing. As expected, she lost it. Started yelling again, calling me names, telling me to get out of her house. Said there was no room in her home for selfish little brats like me. I didn't flinch. I was actually relieved. I packed my stuff, walked out, and didn't look back. But that wasn't where it ended, not for me. While I was stuck in my room that whole week, being iced out by everyone, I'd had a lot of time to think. And I realized I didn't just want to leave, I wanted people to know the truth about what had happened. I was tired of staying quiet while my mom played happy family with people who'd never accepted me. Ever since she married my stepdad, things had gone downhill for me. And sure, I kept my mouth shut for years. I tried to be happy for her. I told myself to suck it up. But that week? That pushed me past my limit. It was so obvious now, my mom didn't care about me. Not really. Her new husband and stepkids were the ones who mattered. And the way she'd treated me, just for refusing to give up money that wasn't even hers to begin with, made me feel worthless. So once I was safely out of her house, I decided it was time to speak up. I didn't want her twisting the story or showing up at my door with some guilt trip speech. I didn't want to give her that chance. So I waited until I was staying with a friend, then I went online and wrote everything down. I made a post, one long, brutally honest post, about what had happened. I explained how my mom had tried to pressure me into giving up my college fund for my step-siblings. I talked about the screaming, the way she turned on me, and how I'd been treated like an outsider for years while she stood by and did nothing. I called out the double standard, how it was fine for them to exclude me, but the second I said they weren't my family, suddenly I was the bad guy. I wrote about how she seemed to forget I even existed once she had a new man and his kids to focus on. And yeah, I said it, I said she was one of the most selfish people I'd ever met. Because she was. All of this, just because I didn't want to give away money that my dad had left for me. Money that no one else had any claim to. And it's not like I would have said no just because. If my step-siblings had ever shown me a shred of kindness, ever made me feel like I belonged, I might have thought differently. But that was never the case. I was frustrated, heartbroken, and honestly furious, and I poured all of it into that post. I didn't hold back. I knew it would get around. I had a decent following online, and a bunch of my mom's friends, and even their kids, followed me too. I knew it would make its way back to her. And at the time? I didn't care. Because here's the sad truth, my mom had been the only person I had. I didn't have my dad, and I was never close with my grandparents. She was supposed to be my rock. My safe place. But the moment she chose her new family over me, just to please people who had never once treated me with love or respect, I knew, I was done. And honestly? I really hope she doesn't show up again. I'm so done with the drama. At this point, I just want to move forward and start fresh. But it's hard to do that when she keeps popping back into my life like nothing ever happened. So yeah, I'm hoping and praying this is. All that effort paid off. I got into my first choice school, and yes, I'm sticking to the plan I made all those months ago. Remember my friend's cousin? The one who was also applying to the same schools as me? She got accepted too, and we're moving forward with our idea to share an apartment. She's honestly such a sweet person, and the fact that she's related to one of my closest friends is just the cherry on top. It keeps me connected to the people I care about. These past few months haven't been easy. Emotionally, it's been one of the toughest stretches of my life. But my friends? They were there for me. They helped me get through it all, and I can't even put into words how grateful I am to have people like that in my corner. I know there are so many people out there who rely on their friends for support when their families let them down. I used to try and keep that distance, I didn't want to lean too hard on anyone. But now, after everything, I've realized that my friends are my family. And I'll never stop being thankful for what they've done for me. Honestly, I don't think I'd be standing where I am right now without them. And meanwhile, my own mom hasn't even texted me. Not once. Not even after I unblocked her. She could have reached out, she knew she could, but she didn't. And that just says it all, doesn't it? That's how little I mattered to her. It's wild how people I've never met in person have done more for me than the one person who was supposed to love me unconditionally. But that's all behind me now. I'm closing that chapter and looking ahead. I've got a fresh start, a new place to live, a college I'm excited about, and people around me who actually care. I'm ready for this next part of my life. And honestly, I've never felt more free.